What's up, guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Brian Reacts to both pro and amateur form. Today, the towering giraffe of a human, Calvin Heimburg. Calvin got his first PDGA rating when he was just 16 years old, and he turned pro not long afterward. There was just something different about the way that he played disc golf. Just watching this guy throw a disc, the speed and energy and elasticity, the humming violence of the disc as it would just rip down the fairway. It really seemed unique. And so I've been wanting to study his biomechanics for a very long time. Let's take a look. So this is Calvin, I think, throwing probably a flat shot. You can see Ricky Wysocki kind of lurking in the background there. And at the very beginning, notice Calvin's eyes. They are targeting down here. He's probably eyeing someplace about here on the tee pad. But as soon as he's sort of established trust, he's looked at it, he's thinking, that's where I'm headed. As soon as he sort of establishes that, immediately he shifts to looking downrange. There he goes. Conjuring the bullet in his mind already, knowing exactly where he's going to be directing all of the velocity of this throw. When you really get good at the sport, and Calvin has definitely been practicing the sport since he was effectively a kid, at least an early teenager, you don't have to think about any of the mechanics at all. The entire thought is just, where do I make the disc go fast? And you can see that so much in his biomechanics. So he has a very leaping, bounding, galloping athletic style. It is one of the things that's very distinguishing about him. He doesn't tend to go slow ever. Even when he's doing field shots, he still does this same sort of cadence. You see him loading his right hip. He's running towards the target, facing it with his right hip. There's a bunch of ways you can walk towards the target, but Calvin feels most comfortable almost closing off a bunch of his body while he's doing the footwork. It requires more athleticism and balance, but ultimately, if you can preload body positions, you don't have to speed to get into them, and it can be very advantageous. So you see him down on his right leg for a second, and perfect weight shift there. You can see how his right foot is coming off the ground just as the left foot is touching down. Everything coiled up, elastic, very, very high. All of his weight now down on the ball of the left foot. And I want to direct you to something really interesting that I noticed when I reviewed this. Pay attention to Calvin's calf. He begins to internally rotate his left hip and his left leg in this position, which is insanely athletic. Watch how his calf starts to rotate in this direction in an instant here. It's a consequence of him using just that tiny little leverage point on the outside of his left foot to begin to twist his left hip inward, loading the giant spring mechanism in his lower body. You can see this calf rotating right here. Seeing it turn internally, it's allowing him to push harder into the instep of this foot. A lot of people get high on their left foot. I do this too in my videos all the time when I watch myself. And I'm up on the left foot. It looks just like Calvin, but it does not produce anything close to the same effect. I am merely just sort of floating across my left foot. I'm not actively pushing with it. And Calvin is in a position where he is pushing hard. He's rotating this leg inward. If you could see him from the side, you'd see this thing happening. You'd see what people have long called the knee drop. It's basically just an internal rotation of the top of the left femur rotating into the pelvis to bring the mass of the left leg in, to coil it inward before the leg touches down. Basically generating a ton of rotational kinetic energy that can then be pushed into the brace and then sent up through the body into the disc through the kinetic chain. So he twists into this position. You see him loading everything. And I want to direct you to another really interesting thing here. So we talked about things that are unique to Calvin Heimburg's form. Look where the disc is in the backswing here. I'm going to demonstrate it. So a lot of people in this position, you can see how internally rotated he is. He's naturally sort of doing what's called briefcasing, is what people have been calling this lately, where you basically are turning the hand, you're pronating the wrist towards you and tilting the wing of the disc down. He's in this position. And from this position, most players, as they begin to extend the brace leg, are going to be extending the shoulders, stretching the arm out more and more and more. Someone like Eagle would do that. Paul would definitely do it. Calvin is not doing that. He's actually just holding the disc like this. It's still internally rotated, but he's not actively stabbing with his arm. He's definitely not reaching back. All he's doing is just loading his shoulder and letting the disc get higher and higher and higher in the backswing. It has to do with what motion allows you to be fast into the leverage spot. And Calvin is unbelievably masterful at this. Watch what happens from this point onward. So he's loading this bent arm. The disc is actually rising up as he's striding into the plant. So he is now pushing hard off the instep of this back foot right here. Push, push, push. Driving down towards targeting this spot right here. So that's his plant spot, and his heel is going to ram down right here. The disc is hovering higher and higher and higher, getting ready to take this huge wave of energy. Down he comes. So now he is compressing down onto the instep of his right foot, and he's coming off the instep of the left foot. That would create that classic inverted V position where the knees point towards each other. You just can't see it from this angle. And you see the left leg continuing to drive inward while Calvin's body is basically just motionless because he's waiting for something critical. He's waiting for the heel to compress into the ground. As soon as he has that, it's like a gas pedal. He can push hard through his heel to extend his right quad. Right now you see how his leg is loaded and bent at this angle right here. As soon as this heel is down right here, he's going to compress his whole leg, and that's going to pull the right hip open in an instant, like 10 times faster than you could ever manually actively open your right hip if you were to just try to swivel or something. You explosively accelerate the opening of that right hip. It jerks the entire pelvis around, which pulls the spine and the shoulders. And the throwing arm, assuming the throwing arm is in exactly the right position to take that rotational energy. And that is Calvin's next priority here. Watch what he does with the disc here. Down on the heel, right leg pushing now, hard into the ground. Calvin now moves the disc. His arm is maintaining that same exact angle. It doesn't change. He's pulling the disc downward to here, up against his chest, still with this powerful internal rotated position. His whole goal is just to move the disc from here to here. He doesn't need it out here. Moving it just to the chest accomplishes exactly what he needs to do, which is basically get a biomechanical advantage on the disc and have leverage on it as his torso rotates at warp speed as the right hip opens up. He's just holding the disc in the same position, but he has internal rotation on it. His forearm is completely pronated forward, which is why you see the bottom of the disc. This is the strongest way to impart energy to the disc. Anytime you do this, any exterior rotation, you lose that advantage, and you lose a huge amount of the force production. And now he begins to extend his right leg. You can see his foot warping crazily. Anybody who's seen Calvin Heimburg throw has seen this in slow-mo. You watch his foot buckle and crumple under the rotational force as the entire outsole gets tugged underneath due to all the energy coming down through his heel. But that does exactly what he wants to do. It turns his torso at probably 50, 60 miles an hour, opening up like this. And the arm is now gripping the disc as tight as possible in a rictus. He's now fighting a battle with the disc. How long can I hold on to the disc for until it rips off of my fingers? I've talked about this before in other videos about how you need to be loose and soft on the disc until you grip it tightly. And Calvin's biomechanics are such a good example of that. He's so loose and whippy in his upper body until the moment that he gets the disc to here. Then his hand is a vice, a block of stone, fighting with the disc for supremacy all the way out to here. And the longer he can hold on to the disc and win that battle, the more energy he's able to put into it, the more spin. Eventually, though, inevitably, the disc will win. And you'll see that happen here in just a sec. Right there. Look at this position in slow motion. How much energy is whipping out at the extension of Calvin's arms. The guy is apparently somewhere between 6'4" and 6'5". And I'd imagine each one of his arms is close to 3 feet long. So it's a huge whipping lever, unloading all of that energy and leverage away from his core out to the hit point. The disc is popping off of his fingers right here. All of his weight compressed down through his right leg. He's got his toe down here, but it's not doing anything at all. This is entirely driven by his right leg. Left arm also perfectly braced up against his body, immobilizing rotation to accelerate the arm. Watch how little his left arm moves as the disc heads out. It's barely moving compared to the right arm. And the disc is so silky smooth that even at 4,000 frames per second, it has basically imperceptible wobble and off-axis torque. It's insane. Look at that. That's 4,000 frames per second. Any imperfection will be revealed right there, and yet it's smooth as silk, as if it's a full-speed shot. And you see Calvin just follow through here. Ricky's just frozen in time back there, marveling at what's about to happen. I also noticed that his face is flapping and contorting, which is interesting because it reminds me of sprinters running the 100 meters. And when you watch a sprinter in super slow motion, their face kind of jiggles and flaps all over the place. They're actually extremely loose, even though they're producing speeds at around 25 miles per hour in their running form. Their face is floppy and loose. Calvin's is the same. This whole motion, this whole giant whipping motion, he has no tension at all in his face. It's really incredible. And he finishes in this unbelievably balletic, balanced pose, spinning still on the heel, all the energy into the disc, his left and right shoulders almost touching each other because of flexibility and commitment to the shot. Pro biomechanics really are something else, and Calvin is an outlier among outliers. His ability to impart both velocity, accuracy, and intense spin to a disc is pretty much unrivaled in the sport. It really is a thing to behold. I think that his big impediment as a player is that his mental game isn't there. If he could make his mental fortitude as strong as his biomechanics, I think he would be an absolute force of nature. He has been ranked #1 before. I definitely think he could do it again, even in the era of Gannon Buhr. Hopefully that comes to pass. Thanks so much for joining me for this extensive form breakdown today. It's really a pleasure to do these. If you like this content, please leave me a comment. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done that already. I read all the comments and reply to all of them. I'll see you guys for the next one.